We are consciously pursuing a trade agenda based on data, not on post-imperial delusion. And regrettably, the data is pretty devastating in terms of the damage that was done by the way that Brexit was implemented by our predecessors.
In the Commons, the Trade Minister, Danny Alexander, had to answer questions about business and trade. And he was put on the spot, really, about Brexit, about trade deals, and about the Brexit reset and what they are planning. And it was really interesting in that Danny Alexander's answers have triggered the right-wing press. The Daily Mail and the right-wing press are really anxious about the fact that Brexit is going to be betrayed. The Conservative MPs, or some of them, Harriet Baldwin is one, certainly are absolutely clear that they are prioritising a trade deal with Donald Trump over a relationship with Europe, because it's not all of the Conservatives that would agree with her. But ultimately, we are getting to a place where really it is becoming clear that we can't do both. You can either have a trade deal with America, or you can have no trade barriers or less trade barriers with the EU if you dynamically align, which means you can't have a trade deal with countries that have lower standards than the European Union. The Conservatives make out that this is becoming beholden and a rule taker to the EU. But ultimately, if we do a deal with the USA, we are beholden to the USA, and we're being held to substandard regulations, which undermine our high standards and our food security. So which one would you prefer?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Product Regulation and Metrology Bill, which is about to start its committee stage here in the House, it may sound a little dry, Mr. Speaker, but actually it would give the Secretary of State unfettered powers to sign up to dynamic alignment with the European Union at the 19th summit. So will he take the opportunity today at the dispatch box, given that voters are going to the polls, to rule out the UK becoming a rule taker to the EU?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm slightly worried that the question adds 2 and 2 together and gets about 97. The fact is the Act recognises the fact that we do have to find a way forward in terms of standards with the European Union, but I think to try and overlay what is, as she describes, a necessary, somewhat dry technical piece of legislation with the policy agenda that she alludes to and suggests is simply wrong. Mr. Speaker, as we've just been discussing, increasing trade with European countries is and has been a focus of discussions of ministers within the Department of Business and Trade with EU counterparts. I've recently met with ministers from Spain, France, Denmark, Poland and Germany. Work is underway on the first UK-EU summit, scheduled to take place on the 19th of May, where trade and the economy will form one element of a broader agenda of our strategic partnership. Across wider Europe, we're negotiating an enhanced free trade agreement with Switzerland that we hope will strengthen our trading relationship there as well.
Sir Desmond Sway.
Arrangements at the border are disadvantaging companies on both sides of the channel. So there are mutual advantages to be had in negotiations without feeling the need to make any major concessions, aren't there?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not entirely convinced the previous government are our compass by which to navigate the next set of negotiations with the European Union, because the Honourable Gentleman is entirely right that there are a whole series of unnecessary barriers to trade between ourselves and the European Union that were put in place as a direct consequence of the failure of the negotiations led by the previous government. He is right in recognising that's affecting directly a whole number of businesses on both sides of the channel. As my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, said, there is politics on both sides of the channel, but we are working very hard for British business in that context. Mr. Speaker, 3 of our 5 largest trading partners are in the European Union. Indeed, 46% of UK trade is with our friends, neighbours and partners in the EU. The Department of Business and Trade, along with other departments across government, I hope in a coordinated way, have been contributing to the resetting of our relationship with the EU and is fully engaged ahead of the first UK-EU summit scheduled to take place on the 19th of May. Amongst the broad spectrum of policy areas, we aim to make progress on tackling barriers to trade and to secure outcomes that will help more businesses across the UK export to our European neighbours.
James McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a moment for Britain to show it's serious about forging a renewed and reinvigorated relationship with the EU, still our largest trading partner. If the forthcoming summit ends up as another in a long line of missed opportunities, there's a real danger that Brussels is just going to move on to other priorities. So can ministers tell me what concrete measures businesses can expect to come out of the summit to cut red tape and the barriers holding back British growth and prosperity?
Mr. Speaker, I'd be inclined to wait for the summit before declaiming it as a disaster. I think that's called pre-buttle in the trade. But his point about the seriousness of the summit is a very fair one, and I recognise it. When I saw those images of the Prime Minister sitting either with President Trump in the Oval Office or indeed with President Macron or with President von der Leyen of the European Commission, I felt a genuine sense of relief that we have a serious Prime Minister for these serious times. A serious Prime Minister is intent on, first of all, rebuilding the personal relationships across Europe. Secondly, then looking to identify where are the areas which are transparently win-win between ourselves and our friends, neighbours and partners in the European Union. And I can assure the honourable gentleman there's therefore an ambitious agenda for the summit on the 19th.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Clive Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Government needs to deliver measures that will cut red tape for businesses in Wokingham and across the country that want to sell their goods to our largest trading partner, the European Union. Since Brexit, over 2 billion pieces of paperwork have been added to UK exporters, enough paper to wrap around the world nearly 15 times. Does the Minister recognise the scale of this figure, and how will he ensure that Conservative imposed red tape for business with Europe is cut down?
Mr. Speaker, we are consciously pursuing a trade agenda based on data, not on post-imperial delusion. And regrettably, the data is pretty devastating in terms of the damage that was done by the way that Brexit was implemented by our predecessors. If one wants to look at academic research, look at the latest publications from Aston University that indicate that there were a whole number of small and medium-sized businesses, about which we've heard a lot today from the opposition benches, that were literally buried under red tape. It is not only those businesses that have been buried under red tape. We've seen an increase in the number of civil servants across the United Kingdom by more than 100,000 in recent years. That's partly why the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster and the Cabinet Office is leading our work in relation to rethinking the size and shape of the British state. But he's absolutely right in recognising we have a responsibility to try and clean up the mess, and that's what we're doing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The UK's economic relationship with Sweden is amongst the most important of our European partners, particularly with Sweden recently joining NATO. As the Minister will know, Babcock are currently pursuing a partnership with Saab to build 4 Luleå-class corvettes for Sweden, which would include significant work at Rosyth Dockyard, securing thousands of jobs in my constituency. This would also be a joint export product, bringing considerable further value to the UK. Given the significance of this deal to my own constituency and shipbuilding in the UK, can the Minister confirm the importance of this deal to our relationship with Sweden and do all that he can to support and champion this vital defence industrial partnership?
Mr. Speaker, having worked so closely with the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown over a number of years, I'm probably about the last person in this chamber who needs to be convinced as to the economic significance of the Rosyth Dockyard. And as my honourable friend knows, I've recently had meetings with Babcock's executive team both in London and when abroad. Due to commercial sensitivities, I cannot discuss details of the deal to which he's referred. I'm grateful for his recent letter to the Secretary of State on this matter, a response of which was issued yesterday, but he can be fully assured that the Government values its defence relationship with Sweden and fully recognises the importance of defence industrial partnerships between the United Kingdom and Swedish companies, which of course contribute greatly both to our defence and our growth objectives.
Chris Law.
Mr. Speaker, food and drink is one of Scotland's most successful industries and is worth £15 billion to our economy. Over the coming months, the UK Government faces a choice in its trade talks with the EU and the US. Align food and farming standards with the EU or reduce these quality standards at the behest of the United States. So can the Secretary of State guarantee that Scotland's food and drink industry will not be jeopardised through a desperation to satisfy the demands for and secure a deal with Donald Trump?
Mr. Speaker, about exactly this point tomorrow morning I'm visiting a farm in East Lothian, so again I can assure the honourable gentleman that I'm fully aware as to the importance of food and agriculture to the Scottish economy and more broadly to the UK economy. I would also respectfully refer the honourable gentleman to the Labour manifesto at the last general election, which made very clear our commitment to maintain important standards such as those.
We let more of the cattle out yesterday. Here they are, their first time having a run out after a long winter. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. And don't forget to comment below. Let me know what you think.